Thank you all for coming. Presentation is going to be a little bit different than the ones you've been seeing so far. There are no equations anywhere in here. There's no graphics even, not even pictures. And I can't even come close to competing with Purple Buildings. So, it's just too awesome. When I see these equations from my colleagues, it's really funny. Yeah. Okay, I get the background, I get the research question, I'm getting close to understanding, and they pop out an equation, and it's like a shark. I just roll back, I can't understand anything there. So I'm going to do the opposite. I'm not making a presentation that will be for legal scholars. My idea here is a presentation that's for finance scholars, or even for finance and economics students. So there's several students here today. So there's already been some discussion about how artificial intelligence works. I don't have a whole lot I can add to that. We've gone from some human program algorithms with basic chatbots in finance to machine learning, generative AI, software that can think based on it's intelligent, software that trains itself based upon huge, probably huge would be a better way to spell it, right? Data sets, and it's ever evolving. Okay, so the AI that's being used is independent from human actors. It thinks for itself. It's going in a direction that cannot necessarily be comprehended. Well, it also means that some of this might be unknowable or even unexplainable by human actors. Okay, we're going to see how that's a legal issue in a moment. So what's the impact of AI on finance? I'm sampling a few issues, okay? There's no way I can dive into everything. I don't even really know everything. I do environmental law, international law, transnational litigation. But I am teaching a class in legal issues in finance and economics starting next year. And so I thought, hey, the AI section would be a nice addition to that. So robo-advisors. AI-powered systems that assist human advisors or even interface with clients directly. As of 2020, so that's like eons ago, $765 billion under management, used by big firms and dedicated robo-advisor firms. Marketplace lending and peer-to-peer lending, AI-powered loan approvals and underwriting, broaden access to and decrease defaults on loans. So half of unsecured non-credit card market as of 2019. Prudential requirements, right? Kind of in post-Enron era, the recession, so forth, some of the different financial requirements that are out there. We have companies like BlackRock using AI to manage risk, and AI allows for more efficient compliance with the regulations, things like liquidity, risk, and so forth. And then high-frequency trades and investment strategy. AI can work a lot faster and with a whole lot more data than a human ever could. So we have an uncertain legal environment when it comes to AI and finance. So I have a quote here. The financial industry is one of the most heavily regulated in the US. And I'll show you the alphabet soup of all the regulatory bodies in a moment. But AI technology is developing more quickly than lawmakers can respond. We have a patchwork of dated laws and regulatory bodies, which means that AI does not easily fit the categorizations within the existing legal framework, resulting in regulatory gaps, reactive rather than proactive regulation, or ill-fitting frameworks that do the exact opposite of what you would want, exacerbate the risk while cramping the innovation. So as legal scholars, I guess it's just me, we must evaluate the efficacy of existing laws and enforcement. That's our first step, right, guys? What are the existing laws for regulation or even private litigations? What can work? How will it work? Does it not work? And then think about, where do we need some new laws or new approaches to enforcement? So that's going to be my structure for today. So first, a little bit of background on the U.S. legal regime for the financial industry. Then I'm going to go into current laws and enforcement of AI and finance, using those 4 examples that I showed you, in the hook, if you will, for the presentation, like robo-advising, and marketplace lending, prudential requirements, and high-speed trade strategies. Okay, and this is proposed or potential regulations and enforcement for AI and finance. What's the SEC guidance, right? What's the Federal Trade Commission guidance? I promise you, Lena Khan sees nothing but antitrust, no matter where she looks. Okay, and will that be an issue when it comes to AI and finance? So the alphabet soup of the current U.S. legal regime. Go through this kind of quickly, and you guys can look at the slide to see the various regulatory bodies, what they take care of. So the SEC, you guys are probably all familiar with, regulates securities market, protects the stability of the market and investors, enforces securities laws. All right, so the 2 main securities laws, the Securities Act and the SCA, 1933-34, as well as SEC regulation, Rule 10b. Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, FINRA, this is interesting. It's kind of an industry group, but authorized by statute that helps develop standards. Okay, so FINRA is, the private sector in finance, but working with the SEC, right, creating rules with the SEC. The CFTC, similar to the SEC, but for commodities. We see some other legal, regulatory bodies. Financial Stability Oversight Council, created under Dodd-Frank, headed by the Department of Treasury. It's not so much the idea of regulating a firm, but of ensuring the stability of the market, right? Broader stability issues. Financial Stability Board, an international body that promulgates the rules. And so, Fed Governor, SEC Commissioner, part of the FSB. And then the Fed, you guys know the Fed, right? Central Bank of the U.S. Again, looking at the stability of the financial system. Safety and soundness, those are words you can probably get tattooed if you're talking about the Fed, right, of individual financial institutions. Ones that might be a little bit more hands-on, especially for consumers, would be the CFPB, the FTC. Okay, so one is going to protect consumers of banks, lenders, and other financial service providers. Right? Fair treatment. So they're going to enforce various laws that deal with fairness, equity, and so forth. And the Federal Trade Commission, laws about an advertising, for example, or anti-competitive behavior. The Department of Justice can bring criminal lawsuits. So if you ever see USV and then your name is after the V, that is really, really bad for you. Your best bet is to settle. You're going to do. And then civil litigation, not a regulatory body, but private individuals, investors, for example, consumers that are harmed, they can sue financial firms for various business-related reasons. Perhaps negligent investment advice, perhaps fraud. Okay? And so those money judgments do shape the way that firms are going to behave. So let's move on to the second section now. This is the one where I'm talking about, okay, so how is AI being used in finance? And then how are the existing laws being applied to it? And one theme I want to take away is that while we're trying to apply existing law, it's not crystal clear how it should work, or even how well it works, or what direction we should go. Right? The uncertainty is part of the point of what I'm talking about today. So, if you're going into the financial sector, or if you're a finance researcher, looking at existing laws, proposed laws, and so forth, that might be of interest to you because it is evolving. We're not quite sure how it's all going to shake out. So let's start with robo-advisors. What are they? Financial firms use AI-powered systems, sometimes to give investment advice directly to clients. or maybe to help human advisors give that advice to clients. Okay. But it is powered by AI. So what are the benefits to it? Well, you can see right here. Analyze more data, more efficient, especially with the client-facing advising, save costs because of the efficiency, and accessibility. Right? A lot of people who couldn't get into investment can, right? Because the cost savings are there so that they can do this thing. So there's a lot of potential benefits for robo-advisors. But what are the primary risks? Well, they could give faulty advice. Why? Poor data training. Right? The machine's only going to be as smart as the data that was fed into it. And so depending what time parameters you use to feed the data in, and what data is fed into it, it's going to train itself in certain ways. Well, what if that unusual situation comes up? Is it really prepared to respond to that? So AI can respond in unusual, unexpected, and here's the problem, unlawful ways. It can be relying upon things, factors, inputs that are discriminatory, and that would violate the law. So what are the legal implications? Well, civil liability, client lawsuits, hit you right in the pocketbook, okay? Financial advisors have a fiduciary duty, okay? That comes from the fact that it's an agency relationship. The clients are the principal, the advisor is the agent. So fiduciaries have to look out for the best interests of the client. So if any advice is given that is not in the best interest of the client, for example, if it is negligent, well, that could give rise to a lawsuit for violating the duty of care, right? In agency law, the duty of care, or due care, they're called that too, is very important. Okay, so negligence, you have a duty, you breach that duty, the breach causes damages. Damages don't have to be personal injury, they can also be financial damages. And so that's one risk if the robo-advising is giving bad advice. Another, and I would always be worried if a governmental entity is saying, yeah, we're looking more closely at you. Okay, so CFPB is monitoring financial industry use and generative AI-powered chatbots, right? So, as AI becomes more sophisticated, the regulators are starting to take a harder and harder look. Some other legal implications, this is from the SEC side of things. AI is a device or tool under the Securities Act of 1933 and Rule 10b-5. So there's potential SEC enforcement if there's scienter, which basically means intent. Okay, so if advice is given and it's bad advice, it causes harm, the SEC could go after the advisor if they can show intent. So I have bolded and italicized the word potential. I never bold or italicized anything. But I did it for a reason. We look here, there's also potential for negligence. Since robo-advisor firms qualify as investment advisors, so it's registered. Okay. So that raises the potential for a negligence lawsuit. And sometimes strict liability. Don't have to prove intent, don't have to prove breach of duty for negligence. So with the registration statements, if there's some kind of falsity in there, there might be a strict liability cause of action. But again, notice how this is all potential. What these scholars have pointed out is we're not quite sure how this stuff is going to work in the robo-advising context. The laws exist, but how do they apply? Again, uncertainty. I don't have the answer. Chafee, Feldman-Stein, they don't have the answers either. Second one, marketplace lending. Fintech firms use AI and non-credit card unsecured loan approval and underwriting. What are the benefits? Well, potentially more relevant data about lending risk. The two presenters before me, isn't that what they were talking about? Here are these factors that maybe we haven't considered in the past, but they are relevant to various finance questions, including lending risk. Well, because these relevant factors can be relevant, can decrease default rates and thereby broaden the pool of applicants who can qualify for loans. Right? People who are traditionally underserved can qualify for loans because new factors are being considered. Right? So what are the primary risks? Well, the training data may reflect historic biases. Redlining. You guys may not be familiar with the term. I hope if you're in finance you are, though. Because redlining is illegal. 100 years ago, they had actual red lines. Certain places that were, say, minority areas, those people who lived there could not get loans. Well, that historic bias still continues, right? We have certain parts of town that are primarily a minority or primarily Hispanic or what have you. And so that bias can still exist and it could affect the way that the AI is trained. And the AI may use factors that, while relevant, are also discriminatory. Okay? You can't use factors like race or gender. That's what the laws tell us, right? We have the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, our Credit Reporting Act, our Housing Act. You can't look at race and gender and other protected categories in deciding to grant or deny a loan. It is illegal to do that. The CFPB is already monitoring financial industry use of Gen AI for potential bias and misleading information. I've mentioned that already, but it works in this context as well. The FTC has warned that it would pursue enforcement actions against firms whose AI result in discriminatory outcomes. How aggressive is the Federal Trade Commission? You guys have probably seen the news that non-compete agreements are now illegal. That's the FTC doing that. Okay. Other legal implications. If a lender denies a loan, they have to provide sufficient details about why. Well, if the AI is doing its own thing because it's training itself and evolving in independent ways, can you ever provide that sufficient data? You don't know how the AIs work. There is potential liability for intentional discrimination. Hard to prove, okay? But it's possible. If you know the AI is going a certain way, maybe it reaches a level of intent. But you don't need to prove intent to prove discrimination. There is something called disparate impact discrimination. This exists in employment law as well. It's easy for the plaintiffs to make a prima facie showing if they can show that loans were denied more often to a certain group of people compared to a similar group. So if we're using, say, Hispanic versus non-Hispanic, if more Hispanics are denied loans than non-Hispanics, that would be a prima facie showing of disparate impact and therefore of unlawful discrimination. Now, the typical defense to disparate impact is if there's a business reason. Right? Oh, it's for this reason. Yeah, the impact might be that way, but it's based on business judgment. Well, if you're not sure how your AI is working because it's training itself, do you have that reason? You may not. So the defense might fall apart. Prudential requirements. We know that firms have to have a certain amount of liquidity. They have to have safe and sound, risk, right? There's reporting. There's all kinds of requirements here. The AI can ensure efficient compliance with regulatory requirements. Well, the risks are the same with other AI, right? What are the data inputs? How unpredictable is it? Black box problem. We're not quite sure why it's working the way it's working. Financial Stability Board has said, using the AI to get minimal compliance, right? Instead of complying with the spirit of the law, it's merely the letter of the law, minimal compliance. Well, maybe that's so optimized it actually increases the risk. Right? Rather than decreasing risk, it increases risk. So the Fed does have regulations for financial institutions' use of complex algorithms, right? Like requiring source code transparency and explanations, dynamic testing, auditing protocols. But these standards were developed for non-AI algorithms. So obsolete and inapplicable, according to Fletcher and Lee. But the Fed is considering new baseline expectations for AI use by banks And we have the CFPB, what's for information used by AI by financial institutions. Okay, so regulators are responding, but we're not sure how to respond. We're going to go with it. High-speed trades and investment strategy. I probably didn't tell you guys, you probably know far more about this than I do. Investors use AI to execute trades, provide strategy, also about human intervention. AI can perform numerous tasks and analyze complex information quickly and cheaply. The risks that the high speed can harm markets before you have a chance to correct it, right? Flash crash. Or because of the black box nature of the AI, how it works, it may have made meaningful oversight and regulation. So, we have the various regulators trying to address the use of AI. Right? The SEC and FINRA, rules about registration, supervision. Okay. CFTC, these various risk principles. Essentially what they're saying is, okay, here are some principles, some things that you should address, and we're going to let you figure out how to address it. Okay? So it's principles rather than prescriptions and proscriptions. Instead of saying, here's what's allowed and here's what's not allowed, we're letting the industry regulate itself. Which self-regulation kind of means the same thing, no regulation. And again, these rules, as they started to emerge in the non-AI context, so they may not be sufficient. I've already mentioned this one. SEC enforcement actions, right? Remember just the potential to prove these things. We haven't seen it applied to AI yet, so we're not quite sure what's going to happen with that. Although the SEC Division of Enforcement has had an AI suite, right? Asking firms, how do you use AI, right? What are your policies, plans, reports, client profiles that you use to train your AI? So they are trying to gather the information, at least, to develop regulations. So I think we have enough time to quickly hit some proposed and potential laws for enforcement of AI findings. So there's three I want to hit really quickly here. The first, the SEC has proposed these predictive data analytics rules. Now, the way regulations work is an agency has to propose them. There's a notice and comment period. Then the agency can revise those proposed regulations, and then the final rules can be announced. And so these PDA rules require firms, well, broker-dealers and investment advisors, to evaluate PDAs, predictive data analytics, to identify and eliminate any conflict of interest between the firm and client, adopt, implement, and maintain written policies and procedures to come into compliance, and keep records of PDAs. Press release for that. And if you guys have questions or want to see the sources I have, just email me. I'll provide it. So the criticisms of this PDA rule exceeds the typical SEC approach of registration and full and fair disclosure. Firms typically have to register. Are you trading securities? Need to be registered. Provide the information so that the market can determine what's what. Well, this exceeds that. And it covers far more than AI. So the burden is on the possibility of compliance, right? Those industry tendencies goes too far. So we have pending congressional legislation to prohibit the PDA rules. They haven't gone into effect yet. It's Ted Cruz and another Republican senator have already proposed legislation to say, no, you can't do it. And even when the SEC tries to do it, there will be lawsuits. And they're going to challenge on the major questions doctrine, which basically says, unless Congress has specifically authorized an agency to write rules, the agency can't write rules about major questions. And something like requiring everybody in the finance industry to have to disclose how their AI works, and specifically, it could be a major question. So that will be challenged. AI washing, I love this term. The SEC chair, Gensler, warned against this. Hey, don't claim you're using AI if you're not. Don't say your AI has certain features if it doesn't have them. The SEC Division of Enforcement has active investigations into AI washing. Okay. What does that mean, AI washing? Well, let's think about greenwashing, right? Where firms claim, oh, we have these environmental or these social issues, right? And we care about these things. What happens when firms greenwash, when they claim to be more environmentally or socially friendly than they really are? Well, there are SEC civil fraud lawsuits, okay? Like Vale, right? They had dam failure, kept making disclosures saying, oh, we care about safety. So after another dam failure and the stock value dropped, SEC sued them. $55 million settlement. Because again, when the government goes after you, you're going to lose. So you settle. Civil fraud lawsuits, right? We have Oakley saying, we're so green. Turns out, not so green. Share price drop. Investors sued for fraud. $9.3 million settlement. So claiming to use AI when you don't, but the AI has certain features when it doesn't, similar kind of fraud capability. Okay. And we also have the Federal Trade Commission that is very aggressive about going after companies, okay, for false or misleading claims. Here's a non-finance example, right? Against Everbomb for misleading claims regarding the ability to control the content of facial recognition algorithms. Reading the tea leaves, I'm just going to say this real quickly so I can conclude. The SEC chair is kind of worried about the concentration of AI, meaning he thinks that the big institutions have the most data, so they can train their AI the best. And so we might end up with just a handful of firms, or even like one dominant firm with all the AI, and smaller firms might not have it. Well, that raises antitrust issues, okay, which the Department of Justice and the Federal Trade Commission could both go after. And under the current administration, both the DOJ and the FTC are very aggressive about antitrust enforcement. So again, that's really the tea leaves. That's so far in the future. We don't know if there's a concentration of AI, but if we keep the Biden administration for another 4 years, this is what will come. So what does this mean for you guys? Okay, laws are not quite up to the task. We're not quite sure where the law is going to go, but maybe as a researcher, you could look at current laws or proposed laws, see what the effect would be on the practice of finance. So I have time for one question. I want to take anybody's time away.
Yeah, Jeff, I have one question. I think you give a great overview of the regulation of AI in finance.
Yeah.
But I feel like this task, is very difficult for the regulators. I feel like a more practical goal is like regulation with AI in finance.
Yeah, that's a great point. I don't know if you guys heard it, right? But I'm talking about the regulation of AI. So I was asking, well, what about regulation with AI?
Yes.
Yeah, the SEC is using AI, right? They certainly are. Other regulators are using AI. So it's kind of like AI to regulate AI. It's going to be a battle of nothing but drones on the platform. Right. Here. Like I said, I only have 30 minutes, but that's a great point.
Yeah, because in finance, in stock market, it's very difficult to identify informed tradings and pump and dump schemes, things like that. If using AI is, it's possible for those regulators. I feel like it will be more efficient to.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, I did see some of that. I chose to go this way of finance people using the AI rather than AI for the regulators. That is certainly one of the keys. Do one more.
Yeah, and the scary part and the dangerous part is who's going to regulate the regulation with AI. You understand? You might get into a recursive problem, and we might get into a total paralysis.
Well, and again, the alphabet soup of all the different regulators plus civil litigation; those are all possibilities. And I think part of it's also what do you mean by AI? you have machine learning, we're involved in generative AI, there's, and even I don't quite understand the different technologies, and that's why the issue is.
Yeah.
We have current laws, statutes from Congress are hard to write and pass. Regulations can be done faster, but they can always be challenged. And so, can we keep up? You know what I mean? Or is it going to be up to industry to try to try to do more and do it in an effective way?
Just a quick one. Talking about, the copyright challenge, I'm very interested to see you take on the copyright challenge at the heart of large language models, training of public data sets, or non-public data sets, stuff like that. What there is a copyright, my understanding of copyright challenge.
I didn't see anything about.
Because
I'm sure it exists, but I don't necessarily see how copyright would work. I can see patent being an issue.
Yeah, or patent.
But it's really beyond the scope of what we can get into here. And what I don't want to take up anybody else's time, so. And yeah,